Welcome to Connect, Curate, Create, where we're on a journey through the arts and creative industries. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Butcher. If you're anything like me, you love learning about art and creativity. In each episode, I ask artists and creatives how they navigate life, work, and more besides. They generously share their stories and offer invaluable insights that you and I can put into action. As the author of Creative Work Beyond Precarity, I blend my mission to give artists a fair go with my academic smarts, to ask the questions that draw out lessons we can all learn from.
I often have people coming to my stall at Zine fairs talking about, my sisters would love this, or people would be buying zines and postcards and things like that to give as gifts. And I think that that's really beautiful because, you want to share your work, but then you almost want more for other people to want to share your work. And there's just so much coming out of zines and zine culture that are just like buoyant and available and active and resilient. And I don't know, it's just such a fun time. It could be anything. That's the other nice thing is like, it doesn't have to be photography. It doesn't have to be illustration. It could be poetry. It could be literally anything that you're interested in. Even if you don't consider yourself an artist, you can write something about yourself and that could be interesting to somebody else.
In this episode, I talk with Natalie Blom, a photo media artist based in Melbourne, Victoria. Natalie shares with us the many layers of her arts practice and how it is interwoven with the vibrant ecology of zine culture. She gives us a fascinating glimpse into her multifaceted process, how accessible and relevant zine culture is today, and the generosity and joy that comes with sharing her art with others and passing on what she has learned. Be sure to also check out the show notes for highlights and links that you can use to shape your own journey. If you learn something from this episode, follow us on your favourite podcast app and tell your friends about Connect, Curate, Create. Welcome back to the podcast. It is a very crisp Saturday morning here in Tasmania, and I am very happy to be speaking online to Natalie Blom, who is a photo media artist based in Melbourne, Australia. Natalie, welcome.
Thank you, Tim.
I get it. I'm guessing it's a little warmer there than it is here.
I would say so. It has felt quite chilly these mornings, but I would expect.
I lived there for about 6 years. There was never a frost.
No, you're right. I am 10 floors up, so the frost is far away from me.
That's great. And you're not from Melbourne originally. I think we just for the listeners, Natalie and we met a couple of years ago, maybe 18 months ago, at a little book fair in Melbourne, and I had a look at some of Natalie's zines and stickers and all sorts of cool stuff. And we just sort of connected and then reconnected again at a Hobart Zine Fair and kept in touch online. Natalie, you sell my zines for me when I can produce enough to send across to you. But anyway, back to this question of, I guess I was saying you're not originally from Melbourne. So what I want to understand is, not necessarily where you're from, but where did it all begin? As a photo media artist, what's the origin story of that?
Yeah. Oh, great question. So I am not from Melbourne originally. I grew up in rural Western Australia. I was really lucky that my high school had a darkroom. So we're talking like early 2000s. At the time, it was unusual for us to still have access to those kinds of things. So super lucky, got totally hooked, had some great teachers who were although we had we had a photography teacher and then they left, and then we had the art teacher being a photography teacher and then they left, and, the usual rural teacher trickiness. But despite all of that, just, immediately hooked on the darkroom. Shooting film, having a lot of control over the process, getting to play around a lot. And then, so during the same time, I became aware of zines. So zines are small press publications that artists and makers create independently, and they can be very simple in that they're produced just using a photocopier, cut and paste, those kinds of things, or they can become much more akin almost to a small photo book and more professionally printed. So at the time, I was really into cut and pasting, writing really bad poetry, and talking about how difficult my life was. So I was really interested in this way of expressing myself that was immediately available, that I could access, even though I was very isolated compared to, people that were maybe living in Perth, who I was very jealous of. And I actually, I don't, there's this amazing mystery that I can't quite get my head around. So I managed to get a subscription to Zine, which was coming out of Portland. And this is like a teenager in the middle of rural WA. I didn't have a credit card. My parents didn't have credit cards. I still don't really understand how it is I sent money to the US to have this subscription happening. But I just remember, getting these amazing envelopes in the mail that had come so far of this. There was a zine, which is basically like a personal zine, usually diarized or talking about the person's life, and made on this really beautiful newsprint paper. And I was just it was intoxicating because it was just something I could see myself making. Fast forward a little while, and I'm, moving to the city to study, very distracted for probably a good better part of a decade. Um, Moved to London for a little while, and then made some friends who were artists and were also interested in, DIY publishing and things like that. Started going to zine fairs there. And that's kind of where I came back to, this is a thing that I definitely want to be doing. And this is something that is potentially integral to my practice. And made my first photo zine in 2017, which was a collection of photographs of cemeteries and graveyards and different burial sites around Europe. And that just sort of really solidified the fact that this was a process that was really interesting to me. I liked that it was accessible to people. I liked that it wasn't too expensive. It was a small object. I wasn't asking very much of people to consider having it. Whereas, you start printing these giant prints and charging hundreds of dollars. Not everybody can access that. Not everybody wants that. Whereas this little thing is just something you could. I often have people coming to my stall at zine fairs talking about, my sisters would love this, or people would be buying zines and postcards and things like that to give as gifts. And I think that that's really beautiful because, you want to share your work, but then you almost want more for other people to want to share your work and to kind of connect with it in that way. And yeah, I like the way that it also lets me as a maker share a collective of work instead of, realistically, if I go to an exhibition, even if I love the work, I could probably only afford to buy one piece, which is nice. But then that work is isolated from the body of work. And then that means that it's not telling the same story that it was when I was in the gallery along with the rest of the project. And I think, yeah, this is a really straightforward way for people to get to take that away with them and enjoy it in a collective way.
Beautiful. Wow, so much there. Look, this is my experience of going to zine fairs, and when you meet the artist and you have a conversation with the artist, and you can see how much it means to them to have made that. They've put so much of themselves into a zine or sticker or poster or whatever it is, and you connect with it. You said about, all my sisters might like this. There's some sort of connection. It just sparks, and as you say, it's not. It's very affordable, and therefore we treasure it. I mean, I have a special place on my bookshelf for zines. One of yours is there.
Oh, so nice.
The Japanese
vending machines.
Vending machines, yeah,
Yeah.
Japanese vending machines. That's a great one. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I've never been to Japan, but it's a style that I can relate to. But your work has your photography. You did that's a, I suppose that's a photorealist style. Would you say? That
Yeah,
was
more
my
documentative.
yeah, which is what so yeah, I'm a documentarian. So yeah, that's why I relate to that, I think, and it's a world that I wish I could see for myself. So I suppose what I am trying to get to is your actual photographic process. So you shoot on film, I understand, and
Some as the vending machines
ah,
was digital, yeah.
yep, right, okay,
So a lot of if I'm traveling, I tend to return to the safety of digital. Um, I do like traveling with film, but sort of I think as I get older and as I start to know more about myself, uh, I'm kind of I get stuck in the moment where I'm going, "Oh, would this look good on that?" Or I'll just swap out, and I'm holding up the whole party because I'm like just digging around in my backpack for this thing that's down the bottom. And then um, I don't think my process while traveling is as good when it's film. Whereas, yeah, probably what we're going to work towards talking about would be the longer form processes that,
yeah.
I mean, it could be done while traveling, but
No, and I would say that I'm in a similar place to yourself there in that, yeah, I am traveling less with film cameras and um, just invested in a new digital camera just to speed things up. And my last two zines were on digital cameras, and it was the whole thing was so much faster. So the question I should have been asking you, rather than making assumptions about where we're going with this, I would love to know what is your process.
yeah, okay. So usually, by the time I've decided it's a zine, like I've done it quite a bit, whatever that might be. So it might be just taking photos of vending machines on a holiday, or, um, for example, Everyday Alchemy is another zine that is a collection of works involving this film soak process, which is an alternative process using analog film. Um, so normally, if I've decided it's going to be a zine, usually there'll be the image selection kind of phase, which is I don't I don't really like doing that digitally. I find the easiest way for me is just get some terrible Officeworks prints and then lay them out either like on the ground, or I've got a large mirror that I sort of like blue tack things up onto and use that as sort of like a storyboard and work out what things are going to be kind of hero images and what are definitely going in, and then what's going to be the supplementary material. Because, like, while you want every image within a publication to be really strong, that's not always how they get used. So, for example, like, there might just be, I quite like using a very like textural piece that might just go on the inside cover and spread to the back cover, just to kind of like, so similar to the way that we used to have like end papers in bookbinding. You would have a really patterned piece that it wouldn't have any information, there wouldn't be any text or anything like that, but it was just to kind of, it was a hangover from the process of actually bookbinding where they needed to put something there so it looked nice, but wasn't actually like integral to the work. And I like that little reflection back into the process. Uh, so that doesn't necessarily have to be like a hard hitting image. Like it doesn't have to be your best thing. And then sometimes having one image that's talking about, I don't know, like, oh, this is a very like blue image, for example, and then deciding if I want to sit that next to something that's also very blue or something that's maybe orange to kind of throw it off. And all of that kind of happens by moving prints around, and then laying out as a digital process. So we're going back into using InDesign usually for something that big. Uh, and then I use a printer over in WA because that's where I was first making things. And they were very, very kind to me because I had so many questions, so many emails just being like, okay, so now I have to know this very specific thing that you probably don't care about because you are a proper printer and print many types of things. And there's just me with just this one booklet that you just desperately need me to get through. But I'm back. I'm back and I have more questions. And I remember like finally going to pick up the work and I printed it and it looked amazing. I was really excited. And I took them this box of chocolates because I was just like, I'm just so sorry. Like, please accept my offering of sorriness. But they were very sweet. And ever since then, like, they've just been the greatest. Um, and I'm very grateful for that fact because you're just like, I mean, I'm not buying heaps of stuff from you. And you've dedicated so much time to me exhaustively asking you things about this process, which is like a learning curve. And we all have. Um, and I think like you just have to like be humble about the fact that I might be being annoying, but I also don't know. And so it's okay not to know. And then so long as you're not going to go and, oh, I found a different company that's cheaper. So now I'm going to bail out on you guys because I've learned what I need from you and I want to move on. But yeah, I think that was a really sweet kind of thing that happened. And then, so while asking all the questions, learning very deeply about conversion between RGB color spaces and CMY color spaces, which is not fun, but fine. We got there in the end. Making sure that I get a process, like a proof printed so that I can see what the output's going to look like. And that lets me do a bit of sort of reverse engineering of the colors so that I can get the density in the blacks that I'm looking for. Making sure that everything's, the contrast is looking nice, the saturation's okay. Because yeah, when you hold up a print against a monitor, I mean, we can calibrate to our heart's content, but that's not going to provide for the fact that one is emitting light and one is just trying to reflect it really hard. And yeah, so then that's the next step in the process. And then we go to final print. And then I get them in my hot little hands and I share them with the world at zine fairs.
Oh, wonderful. And yeah, again, so many questions, not enough time. But so the first thing that struck me there is aesthetics and materiality. You sort of began and ended there by talking about it being in your hands. And, but then also the learning process that you've gone through and we all go through, and we're continually learning the community aspect, the giving and the gift that the gift exchange and how meaningful that is. But then I think sort of to wrap all that up, I suppose what I'm really trying to get to is people when they come and meet you for 30 seconds, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 30 minutes at your stall, at your table, at the fair, and you engage them in conversation. When we're talking about that sort of exchange of meaning, and they're never going to understand everything that's gone into all that work that you've just described there that you put into it. They're never going to get it in full, but it's conveyed somehow in that exchange.
As you're just speaking about the materiality, it made me really think about, because I sort of talked a little bit about the importance of the proof print and the dummy print for, checking your color. But the other thing that it's very valuable for is because the final product is physical, and we're putting it together digitally, which is a bit at arm's length. Once you do have a proof, you can see the way that the canter of the image is like what's landing on the left side. When I turn this page from this image and I get to the next sort of side, how does that interplay? Oh, I've got too many double page spreads. It feels too heavy. Maybe I'll cut that back and I'll make it, I'll split it up with a couple smaller images, or I'll have something sitting just on this side with a bit of negative space to kind of spread everything out. So I find that having the dummy proof in your hands and interacting and telling you about, oh, this image does sit really beautifully on the center spread, or oh, actually maybe like, yeah, you can make all those decisions more consistently when it's physical, as opposed to just trying to experience it digitally. Um, you can kind of pinpoint those things a little bit more accurately, I'd say, or like feel it out a bit more.
Yeah, that's a great expression. Feel it out. Yeah, for me, it's to have that, have it. Yeah, and so how long would that take?
Hmm. Well, I mean, once the photos are made, not hugely long, I would say. Like a couple weeks with a bit of backwards and forwards with the printer in terms of, I send them a file, I wait for them to print, I pick up the dummy. But yeah, not very long at all. And once I have the dummy, usually I sit there with my piece of paper and just sort of scratch out like, okay, page one is good. Page two, I need to shuffle the text over because actually the gap between the edges is a bit ugly. I want it to have a bit more breathing room. My font choice was a bit trash. Like maybe I should go with something that's a little bit less heavy, or yeah, all those kinds of like very, very nitpicky stuff. But then that's what tidies it together. That's what kind of helps you with intention. And amusingly, like we're talking so much about the sort of photo zine side of things, the the opposing side for some of the work that I'm making with scenes is just whatever, just chuck it on the page. How it comes out, it comes out. Don't worry about it if it's a bit crooked. But that's the nice thing about the process is you can model it to what you want it to be. It can be very like personal, and you could be putting lots of yourself into it, and it's very considered. And then also it could be like, oh, I just sat down and drew a funny chicken picture and then did it again four more times. Ta-da, zine. Like it could just be really silly too. And I think that's super nice because I think we sort of, in the art world, you lose a lot of that playfulness or silliness and joy, which can, I mean, art has lots of important things to say, but some of those important things can sometimes just be silly and happy and absurd even.
I like your instant noodles zine. I'm assuming there's only one. Maybe there's more.
There's two because I ran out of the first one and then was like, I've still got more noodles to eat. A friend that I met the first time I went to the Festival of the Photocopier in 2020, um, I met a sort of online friend for the first time, and she told me that some friends of hers had bought the zine from Sticky and had tried to collect all the noodles and then ended up eating them in the order that they're in the zine. And I was just like, that's such a beautiful, silly thing to happen. That is not, it was never my intention for anyone to need to do that. But then it just adds to the whole thing at this like extra level that I just really enjoyed.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, and that's it. It's right. Layers of meaning. So, or no matter how much or how little effort you put into it, you used a keyword there, intention, before. So there's something really intentional about what you do, and then when you put it out into the world and it's in someone else's hands, it's for them to interpret it and do what they wish with it. But they treasure it generally because, yeah, I mean, like I say, I really treasure the zines that I've picked up, and a lot of them have been either exchanges as well as things I've bought, but almost all of the zines I have met. There's been a one-to-one exchange, or I already knew the artist. Yeah, so tell me about these events. I haven't done that many actually. Not compared to yourself. So you mentioned Festival of the Photocopier, but yeah, like for those of us who aren't in this world, tell us how the world works.
Yeah. Well, Festival of the Photocopier is the largest zine fair in the Southern Hemisphere. So over 2 days, I think you could get me wrong, about 200 different stall holders will have stalls. And this is all occurring in Melbourne. The Sticky Institute is a dedicated zine store. They've been running since, I think, 2008. I could be wrong there. There's another organization that I've worked with for a while, and I'm worried that I'm mixing up their timelines. Um, but yeah, they're ardent. They're saying is that they're ardent defenders of zine culture, um, and the only thing they will stock in their store is zines. That's all they sell. And they're quite deliberate about, if a zine is to be to be more expensive than $10, then it has to be more vigorously like checked over and made sure that it's not too commercial. It's not the purpose of the zine itself is not to sell something else. So, yeah. And then obviously they have the usual caveats of, no hate speech and things like that with any of the publications that they stock. But it's very open. They have a really amazing selection of free zines and some zines that are long running. So zine is deviated from the zine fair part here, haven't I? I'll come back, I promise. So yeah, there's lots of free zines which are produced regularly. So weekly, we've got there's Friday Nights at West Ealing, there's Rut Zine. So these are free zines that are made sort of just on an A4 sheet and then distributed for free, but at a regular interval by the maker. And so Zine, I think, has been going for like 21 years. So that's like a huge body of work. And it used to be written anonymously, but the maker, I think, is a little bit more front-facing these days. But I just love that idea of like the ritualism of making something and persisting with something long running in that way, I think is really beautiful. But yeah, so back to the zine fairs. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
I love zine fairs because, like you said, you can meet the maker. You can have conversations with people about whatever it is that their little hearts are obsessing over. You can really see like it could be anything. That's the other nice thing is like it doesn't have to be photography. It doesn't have to be illustration. It could be poetry. It could be literally anything that you're interested in. Even if you don't consider yourself an artist, you can write something about yourself and that could be interesting to somebody else. I made my sister one year for her birthday a Midsummer Murders fanzine just as this is a funny idea. Accidentally spent way too much time on it, got very obsessed and was like, I hope she likes it because I'm loving it. And then gave it to her and she was really psyched about it. But then I thought to myself, oh, maybe other people might also find it funny. And then they did. And it got collected by, I can't quite remember, like a university library in London. I like ordered one off Etsy one time and I was like, oh my God, it's going to an actual library, into an actual collection, this stupid little piece of paper that's got too many swears in it. That's just my opinion about this silly television show. Like it's just the absurdity and the joy like go so nicely hand in hand. Actually, that's probably the zine that most people will be like, I'm going to buy this for my mum or my sister or, other people to share with, which is very cute. And that's another nice thing about zine fairs is you do just get to have those conversations all day. And you're like, it could just be so silly. Like somebody dashes over from their stall because they're like, somebody said that you've got this. Do you still have any left? And then you're like, oh, I've only got one left. Or yeah, trades, love trades. That's the other huge thing with zine fairs is like, I've got a little button badge that I try and remember to wear that just says trades welcome because, we're not in it for the money, but then also like, I want your stuff and hopefully you'd like some of my stuff. And it's just such a beautiful exchange to get to swap things and share in that way. Yeah, it's just really beautiful. And it's always like such a fun time. Like you catch up, like you haven't seen someone like from Sydney or something. Some of the Sydney crew come down for festival. And then some of us go up for Other Worlds, which is one of their fairs. So I'm not going this year. I'm a bit sad about that, but that's okay. But yeah, it is such a community, and as cliched as that sounds, but you see people making things and then you start to follow their broader like artistic practices. And there's just so much coming out of zines and zine culture that are just like buoyant and available and active and resilient. And yeah, I don't know, it's just such a fun time.
Yeah. I've the events I've been to, I've loved, and it's making the time to go around and see what everyone else is doing, and Yeah, look, there was something you said at the beginning, and then we'll get off of zines because there's so much more to your practice as well. But something you said about the preservation of zine making as a cultural practice. I think that for me is super interesting because, but then parallel to that, you also talked about how it's not necessarily about capital gain. It's and so yeah, there's a politics to it as well, right?
Right, incredibly. I mean, historically, zines have provided the opportunity for voices who are maybe otherwise diminished within the publishing world to have the opportunity where there's no editor, there's no subjugation of message because somebody else needs it to be more palatable. So, yeah, like lots of throughout, um, like going back into America, the what's it called? Um, Emancipation Proclamation, like pre that, during all the time when we're trying to work away from slaves and slavery, using pamphlets and small press in that way was very prolific. And then coming further into, like the 50s and 60s, sci-fi fans are making fanzines about the works that they're really interested in, and broadening the universes that their favorite authors are producing. And then now, the 90s, we had the punk and the riot girl kind of movement. So looking at feminism is very highly, deeply tied with zines. And now more recently, we have like the queer community, trans community, intersex community, um, disabled community, all of these people who perhaps don't have as much of a voice in the mainstream methods of communication can literally just be there, be present. Yeah, I think there's a huge intersection with scenes and those voices, um, which is great. And yeah, I think that's a huge value, and the broad diversity within the zine community because of that is enormously valuable.
Yeah, yeah, no. It's yeah, when there are to I suppose as you went back through history there, that it would have been a time when print would have been the only way that marginalised groups would have been able to have a voice. And now there are so many platforms, but they are all so tightly controlled. And whilst there will be guardians to make sure there is no hate speech, etc., in the things that are self-published, it is a form. Zine making is a form of self-publishing in which people can express themselves in ways that are appropriate to themselves and to get their message out there when they wouldn't otherwise be able to.
No, and in ways that don't, like you can go and get your zine photocopied at Officeworks for not very much. Like we're not talking, okay, we have to get a contract with a publisher, we have to agree to whatever terms other people are producing. Or even, if you're looking at photo books, there's not a minimum 1,000 copies. Like it's fine. We can do short runs, we can hand them out in person. There are ways of producing and distributing that are outside of the, I guess, capitalist model, which is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're unconstrained in terms of time and space as well. In that, I mean, I myself have worked with academic publishers, and yeah, the process is. There are so many nuances. Let's say that's just a very polite way of saying it, and so the freedom that you get from, yes, putting images into a photocopier and seeing what comes out. I mean, that's amazing.
So fun.
Yeah. Look, last time we met was January, and you had a solo exhibition
Yeah.
at Sticky Institute.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. So that for me would be a departure from what I knew about you at the time. So tell me about that side of your practice.
Oh, it's really interesting that you observe it in that way, because that's almost like, for me, more core to I was often the weird kid doing the darkroom stuff a bit wrong, which is, yeah, just so inherently like just, can everybody get out of the darkroom because I need to switch this torch on. Why do you need to switch a torch on in the darkroom? Oh, because I'm trying this solarization thing and it's going to screw up all your prints. So I sort of need you to not be printing while I'm in here. Anyway, so yes, the Heat exhibition at Sticky was this really incredible opportunity. So uh, City of Melbourne was collaborating with this an organization called Sweltering Cities, who are advocating for more, I guess, awareness and acknowledgement of the fact that climate change is here. It's not a future thing, it's a right now thing. And we need to work more adaptively within urban environments to um, provide safe spaces for everybody. And a part of that was providing fundings to a group of a number of different artist run initiatives. And they were then to curate practitioners and artists to produce artworks relating to the idea of heat and heat stress. And so Sticky approached me, and I chose to extend a project that I've been working on for a number of years called Everyday Alchemy, which I mentioned before, which is using a film soak alternative process where it gets the film bros on the internet very mad at me. So you take your pictures on your film, and then pre-development you sort of soak it in basically materials it's definitely not meant to be in, and it sits in that little jar for a couple days or a week, and then I take it out and I dry it very slowly using just some rice and the sunlight, and hope that all the moisture comes back out of the canister. And then I have to hand develop that in some C41 chemistry because it will often have a lot of gunk and stuff happening on the inside. That process then basically creates intrusions on the emulsion of the film, and that can appear to look like spots or um, changes in color, movement of the emulsion itself as well, which is really interesting. So basically, a very distressed image, if there's an image at all. And for that process, I was looking at the images themselves. I was photographing just urban environments, so like houses, apartments, and then also plants, because I think a lot of like we sort of overlook almost the like resilience of flora within, especially in Australia. Like we have such a range of climatic environments and conditions that plants have to endure, from very warm to very cold. And they've come up with these just incredibly ridiculous, beautiful, like ways of dealing with and existing within um, those elements. And yeah, I just like the idea that that sort of the image itself is beautiful, but that was meant to kind of incite hope, because I think a lot of the talk that we have often about climate and the progress perhaps we feel we're not making feels very frustrating and lacking in hope. And I wanted there to be a little bit of beauty in that. And so, yeah, I had a collection of works at Sticky. Um, and yeah, we had a series of had a talk and a workshop and a few other activations, which was really fun. But yeah, that work is, since then I've had some work at Footscray. And it's just one of those projects that's kind of like, oh, somebody comes to me, or I notice an opportunity and I'm like, oh, I can play with this. And it's really joyful because it's very practice led. Like you're just kind of meandering, trying things, which I find very jubilant. Like it's a way of making that I'm just like, I don't want to, it's not up here. Like it's do the thing and then assess how I feel about whatever's come out. What can I learn from that? What do I do differently to make it more how I think that I want it to be? But there's also a departure from me having most of the control, because some of it is just beyond, like I think I have a bit of an idea of what these ingredients are going to do to the surface of the film over this period of time. But ultimately, I might be wrong. And I think, or not wrong, but it just might occur in a way that's not exactly what I had in mind. And relinquishing control sometimes I think is quite joyful and enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So which comes first? This question also sort of stems from something you said very early in the interview um, about your process. So do you have a project in mind and an outcome in mind, or do you just take your camera out and something emerges from that?
I mean, I think it's a bit of both. I think often maybe less so with everyday alchemy now because I'm familiar with what it is, and so I feel like if something comes up, I'm like, oh, I think I can do this for that thing, which is not like originally it was more just like I'm trying stuff, I'm getting out here, I'm doing things, and then realizing, oh, this looks like this, or this could be applicable to that. A lot of what I end up making is just kind of ambling along with a camera, and then being like, oh, you keep seeming to take that same sort of photo. Why is that? What am I getting at? I don't know why. I'm compelled to do that, and then sort of investigating within yourself what's interesting about that, what's appealing, or am I getting at something? Is there nothing there? What's kind of happening? But more recently, I think I've been, I guess, um, formulating a bit of a concept a little bit more, but that might be because I have a full time job now and I don't maybe have as much time just to walk around. And so you're like, you want the time to count because you're like, I've only got a little bit of it. I need to make this work for this show. It has to kind of count. So I can't just be like, oh, I've walked around all day and I didn't get anywhere, which can be fun, but isn't always the easiest when, you've only got a limited amount of time. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I'm not sure which I prefer. I suspect it's probably the ambling around and work it out as you go, but we gotta do the job at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I remember uh, there was something we discussed online a while back about time. As artists, for all of us, for anyone in life, no matter what they do, the most precious commodity we have is time.
Mm. And unfortunately, we don't have a baseline of, oh, I've already fed myself and housed myself. We're already on the back foot and needing to do that prior to maybe doing the fun ambling around with one's camera.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, no, it's so I had an also, I suppose that's the other thing with everyday alchemy. It sounds like um, it's it's a project that's ongoing. It's expanding. It's there are new layers to that project all the time. Would I be right?
Yeah, it probably wasn't what I intended in the beginning. It was um, during COVID, and I was just really bored with the photos I kept taking around my very normal suburban environment in my 5K back in Perth. And I was just like, how do I make, like, I'm so bored. I can only take so many photos of that one sign that's interesting in the industrial area. And so I was looking at, yeah, I played with this process like earlier in my practice, but hadn't, I don't know, like applied it to something seriously yet. Um, and so I started playing with it then. And then I saw this call out for botanical artworks for this art prize back in York in a sort of rural city or town rather. And that was sort of like, okay, I've got a direction. Like I know what I want to apply this process to. Which was really nice and fortuitous because at the time it was, despite it not really being so serious back in WA, we had um, the insulation of just being a bit more isolated than over here in Melbourne. But yeah, I think emotionally for me, I was like, I don't, I've shut off the possibility of travel and I can't think about that right now. So then what am I going to occupy my mind with? Because I desperately need some sort of focus. Um, and that sort of came from there. And then yeah, moving to Naarm, moving to Melbourne meant like, it's a new environment. There's new things that are interesting, but then I don't know, like you're just bombarded with opportunities. Like I've been to so many zine fairs since I've been here. I've had so many, I don't know, just there's just a volume and there's more and everything's so accessible. Whereas I find in Perth, things need to be self-led much more. Like you have to advocate for, like, we didn't really have a zine fair or a zine market. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll just make one. And so we did that for a little while with Xerox Days, which was really fun and joyous and everything that a zine fair can be, with the added advantage of lots of people just coming in being like, so what is a Zine? Which is super fun because I'm like, yes, okay, let's go. Like I could talk
Yeah.
your legs off. But yeah, so then coming over here, there's just so much to do. And the first year here has just been me saying yes to literally everything I could possibly say yes to, which has resulted in my May this year being incredibly busy. But yeah, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. And so you said May's really busy. You did the Melbourne Book Fair
Yes.
and you have an exhibition on right now. Am I correct?
Yep. There's a group show called They Shoot Film, and that's some friends and I, all women and non-binary artists shooting in analog processes. Yeah, so that was super fun to get up because so Jess and Ruby, two friends, they used to run Noir Darkroom up in Moreland Road, which has since had to close. But yeah, we've known each other for quite a long time, but not get to spend time in the same spaces very frequently. But being like, I'm a long time admirer of their work. And so mutual friends of theirs who I've met since, we came together and made the work, made the exhibition just as a, I don't know, like an acknowledgement of women and non-binary makers in a, generally male-dominated kind of arena. And yeah, I think the works are really, really fun. Like it's really a really diverse group of practices, which is cool. And it's in a gallery space at Library at the Docks. So it's nice because it's a bit, while it is very professional in the terms of, beautiful white walls, nice, incredible lighting system from the ceiling. It's not in a gallery. Like it is a gallery, but it's, there's 20 students studying in just across, like in the spaces. It's open to the public. There's no division between what the gallery and what the library is. So you're having, I guess, just everyday people wandering through who, I don't know, like often I think a lot on the idea that there are people who don't see art galleries as something for them, or that's something that you do on holiday, which is not something that I do in my own city. So having work in non-traditional gallery spaces, although this is like fairly traditional for a non-traditional, I think just sort of gets people looking and gets people seeing without, I don't know, without those barriers, I suppose. And again, that's another nice thing about zines is like you are getting art and whatever message out of whatever space people have decided that those things belong in, and you're breaking down those barriers a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I guess you're meeting them halfway. It's something that I'm very passionate about myself, being a country boy who would have, the annual trip to London with the parents and going to museums, but not necessarily galleries, and so never. But then going to art class at school and learning about interesting things that I knew nothing about. But anyway, yeah, so I guess, but yeah, you're meeting them halfway so that it's an invitation, so that maybe further down the track, there's someone ends up at a zine fair and, or they go to the NGV, or whatever, whatever it may be, it's, yeah, no, it's what I mean, the constant theme through everything you've said is about how it's a very communal practice, and but it's about connection beyond just the community. Bring it, and there's no expectation, no necessary, no exchange of value in that. It's all about meaning making.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I really love when people like I've some of my friends volunteer at Sticky, and so like I'll be hanging out with them on their shift or whatever. And I remember being there one time, and one of my friends was like, "Oh, I should go talk to Nat." And I was like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And somebody had come in and was asking questions about they're like, "How do you start making a photo zine?" And they're like, "Well, you're here, and this guy over here might be able to give you a few tips." And I was just like, oh, I definitely info dumped on them. But like, I love the fact that like, I've kind of ambled my way through and asked a few questions of a few people, but then like, I just love getting to share the few things. I'm like, oh, actually, and also this, like, don't forget your center spread's important. You want to put your best image there, and don't forget like, oh, you don't want to do this, or you do want to do that, or think about this. And I just love getting to share all of that stuff with people. Um, and sometimes, you get an Instagram message from someone you don't know, and they're like, "Oh, real sorry, but like, do you think you'd mind?" I'm like, blah 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 blah.
Sorry,
Like,
for the listeners at home, Natalie did the international sign for typing
but like
frantically.
super enthusiastically. Like, yeah, it was, it was, yeah, just it's so. I have a lot of joy in like sharing those kinds of things with people, because you're like, I promise you, it's not that hard. Like, I promise you, you've done harder things in your life, and it's a slippery slope, and you make one and then suddenly you've made 40 of them, and you have to keep going because it's really fun and addictive, but it's also fun and addictive, and you should do it heaps.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that's what it's been for me the last few years. It took me a while to ever share any photography, and making my first scene just blew that out of the water for me. I am far more productive now. It is a great way to get into, well, a great way to share your work with the world. Yeah, and I think it's, I can actually say that I think meeting you, that with that first scene that I had, you had must be you must have had like 20 or 30 different things on your table. I had
Oh,
one item.
yeah. I mean, I distro for other people too, so I have the
Yeah.
advantage of being like, oh, this person's got this and this person's got that. So yeah.
But I got a lot of inspiration, not just from just connecting with you, but actually having a conversation with you about everything you do, and then staying connected as well. So, I think the work, what you do, Natalie, is so inspiring. It's there's a member of our photo book collective here in Launceston who met you at Ballarat Photo last year and bought a copy of Everyday Alchemy, who is now soaking film cassettes, film canisters in all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's and she attributes that to you and your zine. So look, it's a wonderful thing. I always ask about the future. So you've had a busy May. Hopefully you're going to get a break this weekend once we
Yeah.
finish this interview. But look, what's next?
Oh, so much. So yeah, I've got for the rest of the year, I've banned myself from structured making. So don't, if something crops up that you could do, like, oh, you've got one piece of work in this group show, maybe. But if there's a zine fair, maybe. But I don't. I'm ambling through the rest of the year because I've got a house move and I've got an overseas holiday, and I'm just hoping to, I don't know, finish off some like half baked ideas that are just kind of dragging their feet around, tidy up a bit of arts admin, and give myself enough space to kind of joyfully plan our holiday, because I feel like there's probably going to be some good work that'll come out of that as well. And then amusingly, so at the thing that ended my busy May was installing they shoot film with the friends at the library. And in our little group chat, maybe 3 days after the install, someone shared a call for exhibitions at a gallery for 2025. So we're already like, what if we just did it again? What if we just did a different thing, but like did it again? And I'm just like, not May. And later in the year, please, friends. So we've got a little bit of an idea there, which is exciting. So it never stops, which
No.
is good. That the like as much as I was like, oh, May was so busy, I was a bit stressed. But also I'm like, yes, but I'm equally compelled to keep making. Like, I think the thing that sometimes people don't understand about artists is like, I don't just do this because it's fun. Like I sort of can't help it at all. Like I can't not. If I wasn't, I don't know where all of this would go, if you know what I mean. Like it just comes out on its own. We don't mean to. It just is.
I love that. Yeah, so many other people on the podcast have talked about being an artist first, and I get a sense from you in what you've just said, but everything you've said through the interview, that this is all about who you are, and life would be boring without art, right?
So much. Well, there's just weird amblings around with questions. What happens if I put this in that? Let's go.
Yeah, awesome. Look, I will follow along with interest, wherever you get to for the rest of the year, and what comes out of your trip, and so much more, Natalie. Look, it's been a great pleasure to find out more about your practice and share it with the audience. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect, Curate, Create. I hope you found inspiration and insights that you can apply to your own creative work. For highlights and links, check out the show notes, and be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast player so you never miss an episode. Tune in next time as I continue to explore life and work in the arts.